You know, I'd be nice if I gave him an F, honestly. So I'm going to give him an H for horrific. They've been absolutely terrible, man. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to TFTV Sports. B-Will here. Think I'm going to do some grading of the Titans so far this season, man. Through the first 11 games, it hadn't been the best. You know, we had some of us had some high expectations for the season. It just ain't panned out that way. We're going to take a look back at the season so far, first 11 games of the season, and do some grading, man. Offense, defense, special teams. We're going to grade Mike Vrabel. We're going to grade Carthon. Make sure y'all stay to the end. Make sure y'all give us a like and subscribe, too, before we get started. It's the best way to support us on the channel. We do fan sites outside the stadium. We do all types of Titans content and more. So any big fight going on, we'll do live streams of that. Any big game period, we do live streams of that. So be on the lookout for that. But let's start with quarterback, man. Ryan Tannehill. So first off, with quarterback, I'm going to split it up into Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis. We've seen both of them. I'm not really going to count Malik Willis because we only seen him for a game, I think. Going to give a grade for Tannehill and give a grade for Levis. But my grade for Tannehill, I'm going to try and be as nice as possible as an F, man. It's just an F. It's an F. You know, he had 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in, I think, 6 games. Seen the stat going around on Titans Twitter. Tannehill, I mean, he threw for a little over 1,100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Just not good enough, man. And I don't know if that was something with his ankle that's been messing with him or what that is. And he hasn't been particularly healthy, and that led to the reason of where we're at now. But he just has not been good enough. And I'll be honest, I'm glad to see him go. I appreciate all the things he did, but just glad to see him go. He wasn't good enough this year. Really started us off on a bad foot this year. Not solely because of him, but his inability to make plays, extend plays, that caused a little bit of the struggle early this season. And I think anybody can agree with that. It's not all on Tannehill, but he didn't help matters either. Levis, on the other hand, I think we'll give him a B. You know, for me, coming in as a rookie quarterback behind that offensive line, which the same offensive line Tannehill played behind, it ain't been good. But Levis has performed well. Of course, he played really well in that first game, the throwback game. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. It's tapered off a little bit, but that's to be expected as a rookie. You know what I mean? That's to be expected behind a rookie, behind a just atrocious O-line, which I'm going to get to them later on. Atrocious O-line that I think he's done well. He showed poise, and he showed me, and I feel like other Titans fans, he showed us enough that he can be the guy that we can build around. So I'd give him a B, man. He's had actually the opposite of Tannehill's stats, touchdown and interceptions-wise. Same amount of yards, a little over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So not bad for Will Levis. He showed us enough promise that he can be that guy, and I'm really excited to see the future with Will Levis going forward. On to the running backs. So it's been a point of discourse for me. I haven't been happy with the running backs, but they've been our best group offensively so far. So I give them a B starting off because looking at the numbers, I mean, of course, it's not the Henry that we've grown to love. He hasn't been that effective this year, but he's still 5th in the league in rushing. So you got to give him his flowers. He's still performing really well with not nearly as much a workload as he normally gets. Tajay Spears is averaging around 5 yards a touch, so very electric player there. I give them a B. You know, they haven't been too bad, but they haven't been what we'd expect to be out of the running backs, what we're used to seeing over the last, 10 years as a Titans fan with these dynamic running backs. They haven't produced to that level, but they've still been pretty decent. You know, can't blame them. Offensive line haven't been good in front of them. The receivers haven't been that good, and that brings us to the receivers. Receivers have not been that good helping the running backs with getting open or taking the top off the defense. D-Hop's came in. He's shown flashes of greatness. You know, D-Hop of old, he'll say this D-Hop of current, but the D-Hop of old, he's shown flashes that he can be that guy. And I'd love to keep him around for next year also because he's been pretty productive when we got him the ball. The other receivers, it's been chipping, chopping. We got Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, with all due respect, wide receiver 1. He's our 2nd receiver, and that's just not good enough in this NFL, especially this pass-centric league that you want guys getting open, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine hasn't been somebody that's gotten open consistently. Neither has Hop, to be fair. 2 of the receivers with the least amount of separation on each route between NWI and D-Hop. So haven't particularly helped the quarterbacks, but, you know, I'd still give them a D, really, because I'm going to lump the tight ends into it, too. It's going to be a D for me. D-Hop's been decent. The rest of them ain't been good. Chig has had drops. So you could also think the D is for drops. Chig's had a ton of drops this year. I'm not falling for any more of the Titans' social media in the offseason, them hyping players up, because I damn near drafted Chig in about the 10th round. I ain't going to lie to you. In my fantasy league. They had me that gassed up about Chig, and he just hadn't produced. He hadn't produced so much that you've got Titans fans talking about taking Brock Bowers. And Chig was supposed to be that receiving threat of a tight end. He just hasn't panned out to be that type of guy. So that tells you everything you need to know. And I know Brock Bowers is a really, really good talent, but that's what we expected Chig to be, and he hasn't lived up to those expectations. Neither is the rest of the receivers outside of DeAndre Hopkins, who's been decent, but it's only so good you can be when you got a terrible-ass O-line like we got. D for wide receivers and tight ends. Onto the offensive line. You know, I'd be nice if I gave him an F, honestly. So I'm going to give him an H for horrific. They've been absolutely terrible, man. Starts with Dillard, man. We signed him to, I want to say, a 3-year, $33 million deal, something around those sorts. Granted, we got a good out after the first year, so I doubt we see him on the roster next year. So good job putting together the contract for him and not giving him 2 or 3 years on the contract, giving us an easy out. But he's been absolutely horrific, man. Just terrible, Dillard has been. With that being said, you've got your left tackle that has been just as bad as Dennis Daly. Thank God he's out of the starting lineup. Just as bad, on pace to be worse than Dennis Daly, who we thought was all just the worst left tackle we could ever see. Well, Dillard beat him. I mean, the only thing Dillard ain't done is got caught up with some strippers up at Deja Vu. You know, if he did that, I respect him a little more. At least Daly's trying. Dillard ain't even trying. He ain't blocking nobody. He ain't doing nothing in the community, man. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But Score, on the other hand, Skoronski, the left guard, he's been probably the only bright spot for me on that offensive line as a rookie. So another hit by Rand Carthen there in the draft. And he did really well in this draft. We'll get to that later on. Skoronski has been very good, in my opinion. He was hurt with the appendicitis that he had to get surgery for. The appendix surgery. I don't know if it was appendicitis or what. I don't want to speculate. I'm assuming that's what it was. But he's performed well when he's been in there. He's been what we expected as a left guard. You know, some hope that we would move him to tackle. I'm fine with him being a left guard. We need to grab a tackle early next year. Brewer has been disappointing to me, man. Absolutely just disappointing. He wins off. I want to say he's won off-season awards. He's granted as a captain going into the year, and he hasn't produced. He hasn't been that good. He's better when he's mobile in the run game, but his pass blocking trying to defend against stunts is absolutely horrific, man. Looks like his head's on the top whenever a defensive line sends a stunt his way, or they loop around and tag Dillard's ass, or they come around and try and confuse Brew. They did either or, and both of them was working at one point. So Brew just hasn't been good, and you know we signed Hubbard as a free agent. He's hurt, so. Right tackle, we got Radens there. He's shown a little bit of promise. Jalen Duncan's at left tackle now. He showed another little bit of promise at left tackle this past Sunday. They've been horrific. The best thing about the offensive line is that I'd say there's at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with Skoronski. I'm not going to say Duncan yet, but Skoronski has shown that we at least have one piece on that offensive line that we can build around. Last year, we didn't have any. So that's work in progress. Tim Kelly. So I had a lot of promise for him going into the season, and the first couple games he was decent. I don't know if he's been found out now. I don't know what the hell is going on with him, but for me, he gets a D so far in this season. You know, I don't know what's going on with him. He had the good game with Levis and Levis' first start, and where Levis threw 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. But beyond that, he's been average, if not below average. Kelly has. I like what he's done, spreading the offense out a lot more pre-snap. You know, get us into a lot more spread formations, not so reliant on these heavy packages. But he hasn't made a decision to me if he wants to continue to feed Henry as a bell cow or he wants to get away from that and sort of modernize the offense and use Spears a little bit more out the backfield and spread it out a little more. You can't do both. You know, they preach balance. Vrabel preaches balance and all that shit. It ain't going to work, man. It ain't worked so far this season. For me, pick one of them and be all in on that. For me, I'd rather it be modernize the offense with Spears in there, put the ball in Levis's hands, spread the formations out, go empty. Let Levis do what he does. Gunsling. That's what I'd rather do. What I don't want to see is us being heavy formations, Chig lining up at fullback, and Henry back there just trying to ground and pound like it's fucking 1988. You know, I don't want to see that. I just don't. It's not going to help us going forward. Henry ain't going to be here much longer. The backup back behind Henry, Tajay Spears, is not that type of back. I don't want to see that anymore. So that's another thing with Kelly. He's just, to me, he hasn't chose a direction. And also, he hasn't been as aggressive for me, particularly in the last game. You know, we've got 1:30 left, and we run, you know, in the first half, and we run 2 bullshit run plays. Then we run a wheel route to Tajay Spears on 3rd down. That's not high percentage. It's not. Be aggressive on those first 2 downs. I know we're up 14. Put your foot on Atlanta's neck. Go for it. Don't just try and be conservative. And that's just been my biggest gripe with Kelly all year is that he hasn't been aggressive enough. You know, screw it. At this point, we're 4-7 or 3-7, whatever the hell we are. 4-7. playoffs ain't looking like it's gonna be, we ain't gonna make the playoffs. I just put it like that. We ain't gonna make the playoffs. Be aggressive. Put the ball in Levis's hands. Let him gain that experience of trying to lead offense, especially 2-minute warning. Those are valuable reps that we'll need next year when we spend this $100 million in cap space. When we draft this pillar left tackle, I hope, like Joe Alter for Shunu from Penn State. Get these reps now, and we're not doing that. So is he somewhat hampering Levis? I know we put him in, so it's not necessarily hampering. He's still getting reps, but I want to see more valuable reps. That's what I want to see. So Kelly, he gets a D for me. Defense, D-line. They haven't had as many sacks as we had last year, and I don't know if that's because of the departure of Jim Schwartz, who went to Cleveland. He was a defensive advisor for us. Now he's the coordinator up there in Cleveland. But we haven't had nearly as many sacks as we've had before. Autry and Simmons have been standouts. Landry, he's coming along. He came off an ACL injury. He wasn't ever going to have a fast start coming off an ACL injury like that. So he's coming along now. Arden Key had a really good game this past week. Before that, he was absent. I didn't know where he was at. All I saw him during the week was on social media and on the Titans social media page. I didn't see him during the game. He came along last week. Weaver has been absolutely horrific, man. I'm not even going to talk about Weaver. I'll be glad to see him gone. But Autry, Simmons, Landry now has stood out. I'd give that D-line a B. They haven't got the sacks they needed. The run game, outside of the first 3 or 4 games of the year, we were pretty decent against the run. After that, we've just been getting gashed. I attribute that to us not setting the edge well and our defense and D-line being out there on the field too long because our offense ain't converting third downs and just not being good enough. So I know that's on the defense a little bit, but I also think the offense has something to do with it. All these groups work hand in hand in football. It's not just on one group or the other group. Defense is tired as hell because they've been on the field all game. Teams are going to run at us. So the D-line, I give them a B, especially compared to the other groups of our defense that ain't been as good like the secondary. But D-line, I give them a B. I'd love to see more sacks, of course, but Simmons and Autry have been excellent. Potentially Pro Bowlers, in my opinion. Y'all make sure y'all go vote for them guys. On to the linebackers. We got Aziz, Gibbons, Monty Rice in them. I'll give them a B. Aziz has been a good, steady influence as he's came in as a free agent from the 49ers. He exceeded my expectations a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really, he didn't get that many snaps as the 49ers. He wasn't a starter. He wasn't ever in a key role. He comes here. He's a key role. He's a starting linebacker. He's got the plays are coming into him. He's a leader on that defense, and he's done that well. So he's led the defense well. I think he's leading. Of course, he's leading the team in tackles. He's been very, very surprising to me in coverage. He's done well in coverage as a middle linebacker, defending the seams a lot. I've seen him defending wheel routes from running backs. He's done that very well. Monty Rice, on the other hand, he's come in over the last couple games. He's been very good, in my opinion, those last few games. So the linebackers, they haven't been bad. They haven't been the reason why this defense is struggling. It's not the linebackers, it's not the D-line, it's the DBs, obviously. So the corners, safeties, I know we let go of Byard earlier, so that really doesn't change the rating because he wasn't playing that well for us as is. But for the DBs, it starts with, Fulton's been Fulton, man. He's been benched countless times. They keep putting him in the game. Play the damn young guys. We know Fulton ain't coming back next year. Just get him out of there. He's been bad. McCreary, Molden, Sean Murphy-Bunting, they've been good in spurts. Murphy-Bunting's been hurt a little bit. But I've got to see more from that group, especially those last 3 I named. The safeties, we got Edmonds that came in. Hooker's been hurt a little bit. That's just been his crux. He ain't been able to stay healthy. But the DBs as a whole has not been good enough for me. We expected some big things out of this group with the addition of Sean Murphy-Bunting. Another year of experience for McCreary, another year of experience for Molden, and Fulton had high expectations coming out of training camp. They haven't delivered. They just haven't. That's to be frank. I'm going to give them a D because not only their performance during the play, but we've had so many defensive pass interference penalties that it's killed us on third downs. That's another reason why we haven't been able to get off the field. Getting defensive pass interference calls, that's what leads to teams gashing us in the run game. When we're on the field, we're on third down. We think we get off the field, sucker punch, gut punch, flag, defensive pass interference. It's happened way too much. So with that being said, Shane Bowen, I'm going to give him a C. The defense is, and this might seem a little high because the defense ain't been that good, but I'm going to explain why. So Shane Bowen for me gets a C. The departure of Schwartz, we don't know how much of an impact that had on the defense definitively. We obviously have regressed a little bit in some categories, specifically the run game, specifically the pass rush, but we have gotten a lot better in coverage, absent of the penalties. We were dead last year in passing yards allowed. Now we're like 17th in passing yards allowed. So that's a pretty big jump, and the credit has to go to Shane Bowen and the coaching staff there, also to the players. But that in itself warrants at least a C for me. Anything beyond that is just extra gravy, but we haven't had much beyond that. You know, the sacks have gone down. We're getting gashed in the run game now. So it's not absolutely terrible to give him an F, but it ain't good enough to give him no more than a C. So I give him a C. They just haven't lived, that group hasn't lived up to expectations this year. You know, in training camp, they said that they were going to be, you know, they were shooting to be one of the number one defenses in the league, and we're middle of the pack at best. So very, very disappointing on the defense. And it's not all on the defense. For me, it goes to coaching also. Now on the special teams, Ackerman. Get an A for Ackerman, man. The special teams has been exceptional. You know, I hate that we've had to punt so much, but that's just how it's been this year offensively. We've been bad. But when we've had to punt, Stonehouse has booted it. He has. I like to see him, you know, add a little bit more finesse to his punting. Not just blast it through the end zone like he does a couple times. I ain't going to say a bunch because he doesn't do it a bunch, but he does it more than I'd like. He has added a lot of hang time. I've been to games, a couple games this year, and his punts are much higher than they were last year. You can tell that's something he's worked on, something he's added to his game, and it's showing in the game. He's leading the league in average punt, net average. You know, he's leading by average punt, I think by like 2 whole yards in the NFL. So we're leading in those 2 categories punt-wise. That's a credit to Stonehouse. Also, Ackerman getting guys down there covering. So A for Ackerman. Folk, the kicker we got from New England in the trade, he's been exceptional. Mr. Automatic, 22 of 23. You know, special teams hasn't been the reason we've been losing games. And they never really have been. But Ackerman's always got a lot of resources dedicated to special teams, more so than I'd like. So this is something that I'd expect from him with the amount of resources that we get and sign guys just for special teams. So Ackerman gets an A. If you would have told me that before the season, I'd be giving Ackerman an A midway through the season, I might have smacked you because he just hadn't been good. But Ackerman's done his thing this year. Got to give him credit. Got to give him props. Drum roll. On the Mike Vrabel, 4-7 going into Week 12 division game against the Colts at home. 13th in strength of schedule. So, you know, we thought we were going to have an easier schedule looking at it from the beginning, but it just hasn't been. And it's still not like the worst schedule in the league by far. 13th, that's respectable. But we shouldn't be 4-7 in my opinion. Yeah, this roster isn't good enough, but he's got a hand in that roster. He's got a hand in how it's become this bad. So I'm gonna give him a D. And it's not just because of the roster, it's not just because of the record. Penalties have been a crux. That's something, you know, from the Patriot way, I've heard Patriot way, Patriot way, Patriot way. Belichick's 3rd best in the league in penalties. Us, on the other hand, we've given up the 17th most penalties in the league. So for a guy that prides himself and hangs his hat on discipline, execution, we ain't been very disciplined and we ain't been executing. So for me, he gets a D. 3rd most false starts in the league. In the whole league, we have the 3rd most false starts offensively. Absolutely terrible. Unexcusable. Pre-snap penalties. Lack of focus, lack of discipline. It's just lack of focus, lack of discipline, lack of execution. And that falls on the head coach, Mike Vrabel, falls on his shoulders. And he'll say the same. You know, he says, got to coach better, got to execute better. We ain't done neither. So he gets a D in my opinion. Y'all let me know what y'all think about Vrabel too, because I've said what I think on Twitter. I want him gone after the end of this year, you know, to be honest. And we'll make another video about that separately. But I want him gone next year. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Carthon. So this is Carthon and Vrabel a little bit because now we officially have them saying that they were 1A, 1B, putting their heads together when it comes to the roster. It wasn't like that before. It was J-Rob makes the final decision, all that bullshit. No. So we actually got Vrabel to a T here that he is and does have his hands in his roster. So personnel-wise, Carthon and Vrabel, I'll give them a B for what they've done so far since Carthon's got here. They re-signed Simmons, which is very, very major. Got it in before a couple of the other big D-line signings too, so we weren't able to get the market reset on us. So that's a win for Carthon and Vrabel and the organization to get Simmons signed up before things got crazy. They traded Byard, get a pick back, and Edmonds. I'd like that move. You know, we weren't going to re-sign. We were never going to re-sign Byard after this year. He was on the hook for a ton of money. It just wasn't going to happen. Cash in on him at the deadline. I would have liked to see us cash in on a couple more pieces, maybe Autry and Burks if possible. We just weren't able to get a deal done. Good job at the deadline and leading up to the deadline by Carthon and Vrabel. Free agent-wise, You know, Arden Key has done he's done decent. Chris Moore has been decent. Dillard, absolutely atrocious. We talked about him earlier. Brunskill's been okay too. So Brunskill's been decent at right guard, another pickup from San Francisco, and D-Hop's been good. So 3 out of the probably half of those guys have been actual contributors and hits. The others just haven't. That's free agency for you. So, you know, I'll give them a B, honestly. For Carthon and Vrabel, personnel-wise, the draft looks really good. So with the first pick, we had Skoronski. Then we picked Levis, Spears, Wiley, Jalen Duncan, who just started last week, and McDowell, or Dowell from Tennessee Martin. My apologies. First couple picks have been contributors. Skoronski, Levis, Spears have contributed. Look like they'll be a part of the future in 3 usable picks, which we haven't had before. With J-Rob, he drafted atrociously on his way out. Jalen Duncan, the jury's out on him. You know, it'd be nice to see if we get a tackle out of there. I doubt it, but, you know, he's still a rookie at the end of the day, so we can't levy our expectations on him as a rookie. He's a rookie from Maryland. He was always deemed a project. So let the project, man. We can project later on and see how he looks. After 1 week, he looked good enough. He looked good for a rookie. Colton Dowell, we haven't seen much of him. Guy from Martin. He's been elevated a couple times. Spears looks like he'll be the running back for the future. Levis looks like, to me, he'll be the quarterback of the future. So first draft looks good. Looks very good under Carthon and Vrabel. Hopefully we have many more. We need many more. Ultimately, Carthon and Vrabel, they get a B for personnel. And to recap, Vrabel, he gets a D. He just ain't been good enough. Special teams gets an A for Ackerman. Shout out to Ackerman, man. I've been a big critic of his, and he's done extremely well. DBs on the defense, we got DBs get a D. Linebackers get a B. D-line gets a B. Tim Kelly for the offense, I give him a D. Just too conservative. Hasn't decided what he wants to do offensively. Doesn't want to be a run-heavy team. Does he want to spread them out and let Levis do his thing like he did with Watson in Houston? We don't know yet. O-line, they get an F. I gave him an H earlier, trying to be funny, for horrific. They've been horrific, but they get an F. Wide receivers and tight ends, lumped them all in. They get a D. Tight ends ain't been good enough. And outside of Hopkins, receivers ain't really done much. Running backs get a B because they've been our best group, maybe out of the whole team. You know, besides D-line, running backs have been good. And quarterback, I gave Will Levis a B, Tannehill an F. He was atrocious. Make sure y'all let me know what y'all think. Comment below what y'all rate the offense, defense, special teams, quarterbacks, and so on. Let me know what y'all think. Make sure y'all subscribe. Make sure y'all like the video. We'll be doing fan sites outside of Nissan Stadium again on Sunday after the Colts game. Make sure y'all come by. We're outside right between Lot C and Lot D. So make sure y'all check that out. Videos get posted on YouTube. It's a good time. We appreciate all the support. We appreciate all the people letting us interview them after the game and really being able to give them a platform, give them a voice for their voices to be heard after games. But once again, it's Bwilltftv. Appreciate y'all.